Someone says, yes, we can. Obama vibes. I just feel very sorry for, those who are listening, because, it's by all this. Oh, but that's why I ended on YouTube. Oh, where did we stop? I'm trying to get myself back so that we can get into this. Just give me a second to recalibrate. All right, audio is good, network is fine. Let's get back on this. So we've already established that even the instrument of pardon was signed not by Ronsi but by Yakubu Gowon, and that he did all of that in 24 hours. We also said that Gowon had just a few hours, but Ronsi had 6 months and he did not do anything. And it's crazy that certain people would want us to believe that Ronsi did it from his grave, or that was the last thing he did before he died. But we're not going to be pushed around by such lies. Having said that, I also mentioned that I want to go beyond the question who released him, who did not release him, to actually looking at the things he said on his release. And he wrote a book titled Adventures in Power, Book 1, My March Through Prison. And yesterday we attempted to read chapter 11, titled The Release, and we talked about the different options that Awo had from 1963 all the way to up until 1965, right, when the election happened, and then you had the alliance, you had OPGA and NNA, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go through everything we read because it was a lot of pages, but I'm just going to give you a very quick recap that Mobolaji Bank Anthony had visited Awo and gave him two conditions, right? That he should withdraw from politics, and he should also, he should withdraw from politics and give a firm and irrevocable undertaking to that effect, or to go out of the country for some time. So he was advised to travel out of the country, go to, London or so, or anywhere in Europe or America for 2 to 5 years, essentially go on exile. And Awo said no to that. Also, there's another attempt by Dr. Akoni Doherty, Pashashori, and Alaji W. Elias. And what they told him basically was that he should dissolve Action Group and Egbe Modudua. And if he did that, he will be released and he will spend the Christmas of 63 with his family. Of course, he said no to that as well. Another option came when some ministers or some leaders, Yoruba leaders, Reverend, and so on and so forth, talked to him about, dissolving Action Group, and Akintola also dissolve his NNDP, and then they will create another party. And he said no, because he was still going to be in prison while Akintola will be doing all of those things. So the whole conversation was not fair. And that's why he gave the parable that if a person had a church, a bishop has a church, and the archdeacon wants to decide to pull some people out to start a new church, and not telling the bishop to close down his big church because he wants to create unity with the archdeacon who wants to start his own other church. How sensible, would that be? All right. There was also another example, also another attempt or another opportunity where his wife was invited to go meet with Baliwa, but she was told to go disguised, right, and also to go in an unmarked car, a car without plate numbers, essentially. And he says no to that. I think I would like to read that bit before we go on to other things today. I'll also get to that letter today by the grace of God, and then we can end this bit. So he says here that Mobile. Yeah. Dr. Adebonojo and Chibakin Olugbade were so thrilled by the Prime Minister's generous gesture that each of them quickly went to my wife on different occasions. But what did they go to the wife? Let me go back just a bit. After this episode, that was after they went to meet Awolowo and gave him other conditions, like he should be prepared to serve in Awolowo's cabinet. Sorry, he should be prepared to serve in Balewa's cabinet. He should work with Balewa and so on and so forth. And Awolowo had said to them that, okay, he would work with Balewa as the Minister of Finance, that he will also try to unite warring factions in Western region, and he will seek and participate in ways and means to promote unity among political parties and so on and so forth. After that, the other option was when the Prime Minister then said that the wife should come and see him. So it says here, through the mouth of Dr. Remi Adebonojo and Chief Obi Akin Olugbade, it was reported that the Prime Minister was prepared to release me. Prime Minister, of course, at this time was Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. The person who gave them this information was Mr. Bodewe, who was at that time Secretary to the Prime Minister. Bodewe had spoken to them separately. He, Mr. Wei, had told them that the Prime Minister had expressed that the wish that if my wife could come to him personally to tender a plea for my release, he would act immediately. But the Prime Minister would like my wife to come to his residence incognito, in unfamiliar dress and car. And he did not agree with this because, of course, it could lead to any other thing. For instance, what if she was found out to have gone there disguised? She could be humiliated or dishonored. And Awo said no to all these options. And then we talked about the reverends that went to meet with him. If you want to know the details, please watch the video we did yesterday. It's in the live section of the YouTube channel Busui Oris. Or you can also get this book, Adventures in Power, Book 1. You'll find this on Redomi Books on Telegram. Then the option that came with the election, all right, of the Alliance OPGA. Give me a second, please. The OPGA Alliance and what they came up with. Dr. Okpara, okay, sorry, let me go back just a little bit. Throughout the electioneering campaign, the Alliance did not name its candidate for Prime Minister. The Alliance was, of course, the alliance between AG and NCNC. AG was a party that Awo, of course, founded in 1951, and NCNC had become the dominant party in the Eastern region at this time. So both of them came together and created something called OPGA, United Progressive Grand Alliance. So here it says, throughout the electioneering campaign, the Alliance did not name its candidate for Prime Minister. The AG had me in mind, that's Awo, but could not present me unilaterally. On the other hand, the NCNC could not make up its own mind on the matter. Dr. Okpara had the ambition to be Prime Minister, but was not sure that he could carry his colleagues with him. This fact was communicated to me by Alhaji Adegbenro in a letter dated 12 October 1964. And then, of course, what he said here was that Okpara wanted to become Prime Minister. Long and short was that they came to an agreement that Awo's wife would run to be Prime Minister. And having become Prime Minister, excuse me, you can hear me. Excuse me. So that Awo's wife would run to become Prime Minister, and once she becomes Prime Minister, she will then recommend Awo's pardon and release to Zik, who was the governor. Why? Why all this happened was because, number one, Michael Okpara, who was the premier of the Eastern region, wanted to become Prime Minister. Zik, who was the President General, also wanted to become Prime Minister. Okay? So here's the issue. You have to remember that in 1959, Awo suggested that Zik be Prime Minister while he would be Minister of Finance. And that agreement was what they were going to work with until Zik reneged and decided to work with the North by becoming president with no executive powers, with Abubakar Tafawa Balewa becoming the Prime Minister. So what I did essentially was to now put Zeke in the place where he had that position, but he didn't have the power that he wanted, which he could have gotten if he had gone with what Awolowo suggested. Anyway, years later, he now wanted to become prime minister. But because he was president, they now were asking themselves, how would he become prime minister? So, Okpara came up with the idea that maybe Awolowo should become the vice president. But the problem is that there's no vice president position in Nigeria at the time, because we're running a parliamentary system. We had the prime minister and we had the governor general who had become the president as of 1965, because Nigeria became a republic in 1963. Anyway, in order to get out of that conundrum, Awolowo then suggested that his wife be voted to become the prime minister. And having become the prime minister, she will then, send a message to the governor general, all right, which is something he referred to as recommend my pardon and release to Azikiwe. So he will recommend the pardon and release to Zeke. Zeke will release Awo. Awo will become the prime minister. His wife will vacate. And then once Awo becomes prime minister, Awo will then make Zeke the prime minister. Sorry, no, not that. Once Awo becomes the prime minister, somebody on the floor, somebody in parliament will then vacate their seat so that Zeke can become a member representing a particular district in the parliament. And having become a member of the parliament, he would then become the prime minister and Awolowo will step down for him. Again, it's a different time. It's not like what we have right now, not presidential, what you are doing. So the by-election is what you needed to be able to get in parliament. Just think of what you have with the Westminster model, which is what you have in the UK right now, right? Where you don't become a prime minister because people voted for you. We all know that, right? What was the last time they had a general election for prime minister in the UK? What's the idea? You become prime minister by being voted for by your own peers in the parliament, which is what you have in the House of Commons, right? In Westminster. So that was what Awolowo came up with. But let me read what happened to you. In fact, let me read everything again. So he says here that Okpara suggested. Let me start from here. Dr. Okpara visited me at Calabar Prison for the sole purpose of discussing the UPGA strategy for the election, with special reference to the choice of candidate for prime minister. He disclosed to me that the old man, meaning Zeke, would himself like to be prime minister. I had no objection. I would be content to be his minister for finance. But there were constitutional snags. He could not resign the presidentship to be candidate. He therefore suggested that for the Alhaji Aminu Kano or Mr. Luke Akifoshile. I objected on the grounds that the attraction, by the way, if you read the Igbo National Protocol, Akifoshile was the person that the NCNC people preferred to FFK, FFK's father. That's Remi Fani-Kayode, RFK at the time. They believed, the Igbos believed, this was in 64 by the way, the Igbos believed that Akifoshile was malleable and it would be easy for them to work with than somebody who has interest of Yoruba people at heart. And that was why they were vehemently against Remi Fani-Kayode. Sorry for another day. So the reason I brought that up is because they mentioned this name because they knew that this kind of person would kowtow to them or to whatever it was that was their plan at the time. So they came up with the name of Aminu Kano and Akinfoshile that, let them become prime minister, they will release you. I will say no. I objected on the grounds that the attraction of office might induce them to stay put after they had been elected and sworn in. And if they refused to resign, what then? They might even refuse to release me and a crisis might ensue. We agreed that my wife was the safest bet in the circumstances. In other words, the wife would represent a particular, what's it called now? Constituency. And become an MP and then she can become prime minister. You get the point? She would, I'll tell you again. We agreed that my wife was the safest bet in the circumstances. After she became prime minister, she would recommend my pardon and release to Zeke. After my release, she would resign to make place for me as prime minister. In that capacity, I will set into motion the constitutional process for Zeke's resignation. A member of the House of Representatives would resign, and at by-election, Zeke would be elected. I would then resign. He would assume the post of prime minister and I would go to the Ministry of Finance. Dr. Okpara undertook to consult with his colleagues about my suggestions, which he considered reasonable. He would urge the acceptance on his colleagues and report back to me. As far as I knew, he did not consult his colleagues, and I heard nothing from him. Apart from the fact that apart from the fact that the OBGA had no candidate for Prime Minister, the executive of the alliance decided to boycott the election. The boycott was so ineffective, except in the eastern region where Dr. Okpara was premier. It threw the AG members into complete disarray, which was exactly what they've been trying to do. And I know this because if you compare two books, you arrive at the same conclusion. If you read, you must set what are done, and I don't want to read it now because it will take us out of this conversation. You must set what are done by Wole Soyinka, and then you read the Igbo National Protocol. What you discover is that while the Yoruba people were celebrating that, we can work with these people at least, even though the Northerners have sent Papa to prison, we can work with the Igbos. The Igbos were working with the Yoruba because we're trying to gain inroads into Yoruba land, not just into Western region, but into Yoruba land, period. And they wrote it down. Okay, I've read it here before. The plan really is that all the things that Awolowo said right now would have made sense if you're dealing with people who actually wanted the best for you and for the country. In other words, you have a Afenifere for yourself and for others and for the entire country. But what they wanted was selfish, and that's why they didn't report back to Awo. And then eventually, when they boycott the election, the AG folks in the southwest, the western region, just lost everything. But in the eastern region, it worked because they were the dominant party. Having regard to all the circumstances, it appeared to me that a large contributory cause to the OBGA failure at the election was a deliberate or unconsciously motivated bungling on the part of many of its leaders within the NCNC who did not want me released. It was the same men who had implacably prevented coalition between me and Zik in 1959 that were at work. Interestingly, Michael Okpara put out a statement years ago where he talked about his regrets of not working with Awolowo. And it says here, I shall regret to my dying day having taken part to advise Zik not to form the alliance with Chief Awolowo, who said that Michael Okpara, he calls it his greatest political blunder. I'll show it to you. This was published in The Nation. All right, one of the things I like about life, only one go back to work or no, to buy chep buru buy on layo, he wa ma ṣe lọ. Ẹni bá ṣe rere ń tiẹ̀ kó máa ṣe lọ. Mo mọ̀ dájú ọjọ́ kan ń bọ̀. The thing about this, folks, is that they never think of nǹkan tó lè jáde later. This was published November 1980, the New Nation newspaper. I want to see if I can read you the article itself. So while he was telling Awo that we can make this happen, it's going to work, this idea is very good, he was also the one who was also scuttling the plan to work with Zik in 1965. Only for him to now say in 1980, I shall regret to my dying day. I mean, regret doesn't mean you're sorry. I mean, maybe you're sorry after the fact, but it doesn't change what happened 15 years prior, does it? Ombo, I'd have loved to read the article to you. Just give me a second. Mo mọ̀ dájú pọ́jọ́ kan ń bọ̀. Mo mọ̀ dájú pọ́jọ́ kan ń bọ̀. Gbogbo kan tó bá gbélé ayé ṣe, wọ́n máa rí gbangba. Mo ń bọ̀, I want to read it to you because it's important. Ṣé máa lè rí kàdàlà fún yín báyìí? Ẹ fún mi ìṣẹ́jú kan. So it's an image. It's not text, and so it's a bit blurry. And that's why I keep saying that sometimes it is time, Omar, or unravel stuff. Give me a second, please. You go through all this to scuttle the plans and then turn around to want to take credit for stuff. Okay. Recently, New Nations correspondent in the eastern states spoke to Dr. Okpara amidst interruptions by visitors and calls for one medical attention or the other in the clinic. And he says, I shall regret to my dying day having taken part to advise Zeke not to form alliance with Chief Awolowo. The question was, given the very nature of your militant position in Nigerian politics of the First Republic, one could safely believe that you were one of those custodians of the country's political barometer at the time. By your honest calculation, what caused the failure of the First Republic? Then he says, I believe the Republic failed because of a number of factors. Firstly, the First Republic violated the most basic structure of federalism. No one state should be larger than the rest of the states combined. And then he says that he will regret. I'll see if I can find the full interview. I think it would be nice, but I didn't plan to read everything. I just wanted to show you the heading. For some reason, I just feel like reading the entire thing, but maybe some other time. All right. Modaju. So anyway, the point here is that later on, he said that he would regret to his dying day. He's dead now, and it's a shame that Kosantori Tolojoshe Someone says, with Yoruba must make him proud, even in his grave. Please think Yoruba first in the country. That's from Madame Mosun on TikTok. I want to take a pause now. Yomite on YouTube says, in that case, Michael Okpara had a lot of blame like his friend Zeke, but Okpara was very close to Mama back then. Even the closeness. Let me also say something. There is this thing that's flying all over social media saying that Okpara gave Mama one kidney coin in the East. It's not true. This thing, I'm sure you must have seen it. In fact, that was the primary reason I stopped people from typing in Redomi Global on Telegram, because I was spending too much time trying to provide rebuttals to claims made on Telegram channel, because certain people from other ethnicities, and Redomi Global is open to everybody, so they joined and started pushing that propaganda. I had to now spend time debunking it. I just said, you know what, nobody should be writing anything on this thing, because the work was too much for me. I had too much to do already. Bro, give me a second. That thing they say is not true. I have it here, but I don't want to read it out, because what purpose? Bro, I want to find you the article, since we are on this thing, so that we can all learn together. I found it. Shegabis. Okay, you know what? I'm going to visit that thing before we go. I think it's important. But let me read this one first. The newspaper had asked him. So Sarah reporters revisited it, so they printed it. Again, 1980 interview with Nation newspaper at the time. November 1980. The paper asked him, given the very first nature of your militant position in Nigerian politics, the question I asked earlier, let me now tell you the answer. Okpara answered, I believe the Republic failed because of a number of factors. Firstly, the Republic violated the most basic structure of federalism. No one state should be larger than the rest of the states combined. In other words, no state should be larger than the rest of the country. This was violated from the beginning, and every effort made to safeguard it failed. And I regret to my dying day having taken part to advise Zeke not to form the alliance with Chief Awolowo. So it's not actually more than that. It's the same thing I've been reading. So I've just satisfied my curiosity on live broadcast. Can you imagine? But before we go, I want to answer what that gentleman said. All right. Give me a second. I'll find you the answer because I've written it somewhere before, so I don't want to start reading anything. I'll just go and look for it for you. Mbo. Where is this? Give me a second. Almost there. I'll read you what they said, then I'll read the rebuttal. Almost there. This is not part of our session, also. If you notice that let me read to you what they've been saying, and then we'll find a way to answer it. So the person says, before we forget, the haters of the Igbo should remember that can we do this tomorrow? So it doesn't take us out of us. Should we talk about it now? Okay, no, let me just talk about the part that has to do with Mama HID. They said here that in an extraordinary gesture of solidarity, Okpara appointed Mrs. Anna Awolowo, the wife of the imprisoned leader, as honorary minister in the Eastern Nigerian government, equipping her with a Mercedes-Benz, chauffeur, and full ministerial privileges. This was not just symbolic, it was an open declaration of interregional support and respect. The answer, did it happen? It did not happen. Okay, someone said we should do it now. Okay, let's see how much we can take before. That Wole Soyinka records in his memoir, "You must set forth at dawn." Dr. Okpara did not just sympathize, he acted. He provided financial and political support to Awolowo's camp, reabsorbed Professor Sam Aluko, another loyalist dismissed from the University of Ife, into University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and set Mazi Ukono and the Eastern Nigerian Broadcasting Service to broadcast the authentic result of the Western Region election from Awolowo's Ibadan residence, directly challenging the state-sponsored electoral fraud. Let me just tell you my answer. Number one, when you read the book, You Must Set Forth at Dawn, nowhere in Soyinka's memoir does it mention Dr. Michael Okpara providing personal support to Chief Obafemi Awolowo or his wife. The claim that she was made an honorary minister in the Eastern region with full privileges is not backed up by any historical records. What Soyinka actually talks about is his own involvement in the political crisis in the Western region and the wider ideological struggles between the NNDP and the opposition. While the Eastern region under Dr. Okpara was politically aligned with the Action Group through the OPGA coalition, there is no documented proof that Okpara directly helped Awolowo or his wife, whether materially or symbolically. There are historical accounts of Action Group sympathizers like Professor Sam Aluko, who resigned from the University of Ife during the crisis, later finding academic positions at University of Nigeria, Nsukka. But again, there is no solid evidence that Dr. Okpara personally arranged or influenced the appointment, but it is a possibility. It is important to separate verifiable history from embellished storytelling. Okay, that was me just talking. Anyway, the point is, there is no proof that Okpara did anything for Mama. Not like Mama needed anything. People don't even understand how rich that woman was. Maybe because we're Yoruba and we don't do all this, I better pass my neighbor. Mama was so rich. When Papa was in school from 1944 to 1947, thereabout, she took care of all the children. They were 5 by herself. She had a place in Agbeni. She was a market woman. She was a businesswoman. There was an interview that the daughter, ambassador, who became an ambassador later, Awolowo Dosumu, Dr. Tokunbo Awolowo Dosumu, she gave when they were talking about when she was in school studying medicine and they went to get a car, and Papa was, dilly-dallying. The mother was the one who bought her the car. So the idea that Eastern Regional said they're going to give him chauffeur-driven, they had chauffeur-driven cars before Okpara even knew what politics was about. All this nonsense that they always keep throwing all over the place. They already had drivers before. I mean, Awo became leader of government business in 1952. He became premier in 1954. And long before he became minister, before he got into politics, his wife was already doing very well. So using our HID to score chief political points makes absolutely no sense. Okwara did not do anything for Awo. And I think you wrote that Okwara was close to Mama HID. That's not true. It's just propaganda. You won't find any proof, by the way. Not one. All right, let's get back to the book. Oh boy, we've taken a detour. Ah boy, where were we? So I have to jump. Let's just go through the letter straight up because. Okay, we're almost done now. Let's just finish and then we'll go to the letter. I'm sorry for myself. This is past 8. We'll be there. Let us read. So it says here that having regard to all circumstances, this is Awo speaking, it appeared to me that a large contributory cause to the UPGA failure at the election was a deliberate or unconsciously motivated bungling on the part of many of its leaders within the NCNC who did not want me released. And I dare say Okpara will be one of them. And if you really read the Igbo National Caucus, you will find names like Okpara, you find names like Kiloko Abai, Ozumba Mbadiwe, names like Mbanugo. These are people who had plans for Awo, but not for his release. Let me read something to you from that stuff. It's not today's topic, but I like Ayaba. The reason is because history cannot be understood from just one source and just talking about one thing. You discover that things are linked. You see something and it's linked to some book that you read years ago. And that's a very good way to understand history. I'm going to read something to you very quickly. I'm trying to remember where I found that thing. Just a bit of it, not everything. Pay attention to this. This is one of the things that the Igbo National Caucus put out in 1964. I'm not going to read everything, just this part. Play up Awolowo at all times. These will keep up the resistance of the action group members and stop them from uniting with the NNDP to form a solid Yoruba front. This is vital and there is no longer a headache or danger to us. Intensify all propaganda against Akintola. Don't hold that he is sufficiently discredited already. He is still dangerous. We must always keep the quarrel between himself and the action group alive. This will ensure the disunity amongst Yoruba leaders. Seek all means to discredit Fani Kayode. He is the real and only barrier to our domination of the West and our ultimate control of the Federation. It's longer than that, but that's the part I want to read today. You think people that say play Awolowo at all times so you can discredit Kiniko and create enmity between different groups and create division in Yoruba. You think they're doing this because they want to help Yoruba people or help Awolowo achieve anything? Who signed this document? Ozumba Mbadiwe and Dr. Mbanugo. Who, by the way, according to our own record that was even submitted to the police in the Midwest, was planning to assassinate Awo. That's the Mbanugo man. One of these days I should talk about it. So, someone says from prison. Yes, this was 64. Awo went to prison September 63. So when they say play up Awolowo at all times, that is why what's this man's name? Oh shoot, I saw the name just now. When they went to set up that rubbish radio station they did in Papa's house, I'll look for that person's name because I must find it. Number Mazi Ukonu, that's his name. When the Ukonu went to set up radio station in Ibadan, in Okebola, you would think it was because of love for Yoruba people. No, it was based on this plan to play up Awolowo at all times. And that's why I said, when you read, if you ever read Wole Soyinka's book, also make sure you find, don't worry, all some of this is, I'll put it in one of the upcoming books. We have to put everything together so we don't deceive ourselves. Soyinka was working with the broadcasting guys, like, oh, let's do it together, let's make it something happen. We sat under the table, we looked up the mahogany table, all those things he was saying in his book, he was set forth at dawn. Fantastic stuff, right? But in reality, they were doing it because they were trying to create division among Yoruba people. Am I the one saying this? No. They wrote it in their own protocol. What is not said in public sometimes is more than what is said in public. And what the normal people say, oh, they are doing something for us. In reality, they are doing it against you. I'll read that part again. You know what? There's another. Don't worry. We are here. I'm looking for a book. I mentioned Akifo Shile earlier, where they said that, again, it was signed by Mbadiwe and Mpanugo. They said that Okpara should have pampered Fani Kayode till an NTNC victory in the regional West elections was secured. Then we could have ruthlessly dispensed with him and put a more amenable person like Akifo Shile in the saddle. When you read Awolowo's book, this one, it was the Akifo Shile that they put up to Awo in 65. It was the Akifo Shile they were saying in 64 that was more amenable. That's what I was saying earlier. Where was I reading from? I'm reading from the IUL, the Igbo National Protocol. And then they now said, play up Awolowo at all times. This will keep up the resistance of the action group members and stop them from uniting with the NNDP to form a solid Yoruba front. This is vital, and there is no harm in this pro-Awolowo propaganda, for it's no longer a headache or danger to us. They now say here, intensify all propaganda against Akintola. Don't hold that he is sufficiently discredited already. He is still dangerous. We must always keep the quarrel between himself and the action group alive. This will ensure the disunity amongst the Yoruba leaders. Seek all means to discredit Fani Kayode. He is the real and only barrier to our domination of the West and our ultimate control of the Federation. If you are not demonic, how would you plan this kind of thing for another group of people when you already have your own region to govern? So I'm also saying this because of the thing I read earlier. I say, oh, there was a Okonu, they set up radio. It was because they were trying to support Yoruba people. No, it was because they were playing out Awolowo. Because the radio will be heard within Yoruba territory. Oh, Awolowo is such a great man. Which is why I'm very careful when people come around and say things like, listen, I'm an Awolowo man for life. Okay? And yes, there are some things I don't agree with when it comes to Akintola. But I won't let somebody come around and say, Awo is better than Akintola. I will now support him and say, yeah, you are right. They are doing you. I have to say it in Yoruba. It's Yoruba English. They are doing you. They are not doing what they are doing because they are trying to actually celebrate Awolowo. They are doing it in comparison with another in order to create conflict. And it's what you see in politics. It's what you see even in relationships. They will say, this one is better than this one. You will now support this one against this one. For instance, why can't you just talk about the greatest of Messi without mentioning Ronaldo? Why can't you talk about the greatest of Ronaldo without mentioning Messi? You have to pit them against each other. But you know what? That one is benign. It's just conversation about football. Imagine you're talking about the leaders of the people. So when they went to set up shop in Ibadan to be talking about the greatness of Awo, it was so that those who were supporting Akintola would have a problem with Awo. Now, if you are a supporter of Awo like me, you see no problem with people. Listen, I think Awo is deity. Okay? At that level, deity as in Orisha. Okay, I'm not saying it's God. You get what I'm saying? But the point I'm trying to make is that as much as I think that, when an outsider is beginning to shout, your father is great though, he's great though, compared to all these other people, he's great though. Is he really great, or you're telling me something else? I know he's great, but you don't have to put this other thing there. That's what they were doing back in the day. And everything now ended up scuttling the whole plan. They bungled the plan, okay, and I mentioned some of those names, including Okpara, who himself, said that he would regret advising Zik against the alliance. And Awo is saying that those same people also advised Zik against the 1959 alliance. So if you really think about it, there was a 1959 alliance that was scuttled. There was a 1965 proposed alliance that was also scuttled. There was also 1979 when Zik eventually also did what Zik did again in 59, went with the North. That's why when you have conversations with folks from the South and they say things like, you are always supporting Fulani, you are Fulanis there, I'm like, you must be dull and daft. Because in Nigerian political history, if there's any group that's always followed Fulani all over the place, it's the Igbos. Whether you're talking 59, we're talking of True First Republic, or 79 Second Republic, or even when you had military Kini, when you had ABN, who was Association for Better Nigeria? Was it not Nwosu? With, what's his name? IBB. Who was the one that organized 1 million march for Abacha? Was it not Daniel Kanu? The first time Yoruba people and Hausa people actually did something, and 1 second. They're trying to switch the power source. Okay. The first time that Yoruba people, hey, give me a second, please. This is well with today's session. All kinds of funny things are happening, but we'll let the yim adoyo. I will come for Jenny. So we've talked about that, Abi. So don't get carried away by it. Somebody who did some great things for you in the past. It's not true. And I would love it to be true, to be clear. I mean, I even thought those things were true until I went to dig deeper and discovered that, oh boy, so in 59, when I was suggested that he would be the prime minister, and Zik would be the minister of finance, Zik would be the prime minister, they scattered everything. In 65, the same thing happened. In 79, the same thing happened. Zik went to work with the North. All right. I said in Second Republic, yes, Zik worked with the North 79. During the military era, you had them working with IBB. It was even Ojukwu that told IBB, that what's the word now? That it was good that they actually cancelled the election. You find this in the book by Wole Soyinka. I'll see if I can remember the title. I see the cover of that book now. It's black. Okay. Open Saw of a Continent. Open Saw of a Continent. That's the book by Soyinka, where he talked about what Ojukwu was doing in the corridors of power when IBB was in government. And he did all of that because he went to collect his father's property. He's in the book. Open Saw of a Continent by Soyinka. And then, of course, when it was, you had ABN, and you had Wosu, you had Otonzeri, but you had all these people, right? Then you had, Daniel Kanu with 1 million march, Balabacha. When you look through Nigeria's history, the people who have been following the North to be doing everything, regardless of whose ox was God, were actually folks on the Southeast. The first and only time that the people have actually done something, let me not say the only time, the first time that the people actually worked with the North and they got something like, okay, we have results, was 2015. Since independence was 2015. The second time was, and even that second time is arguable, but you can say, okay, maybe when President Tinubu became, so think about how recent that is. But the person who has been following the North since before independence is the one telling you that you are a slave. He's telling you who he is. Having regard to all the circumstances, it appeared to me that a large contributory cause to the OPGA failure at the election was a deliberate or unconsciously motivated bungling on the part of many of its leaders within the NCNC who did not want me released. It was the same men who had implacably prevented coalition between me and Zik in 1959 that were at work. Besides, the NPC, which was in power in the northern region, placed every conceivable obstacle in the way of the OPGA during the campaign. Permits to hold meetings were withheld, and where they were issued, conditions were attached as to what topic the permit holder could speak on. Any deviation would make the holder liable to instant arrest and summary trial before a customary alkali court, where a sentence of at least 6 months imprisonment would be imposed. If you want to understand what happened, a similar event that happened in the North, that looked like what Papa is talking about here, please read Adventures in Power Book 2, The Traverse of Democracy and the Rule of Law. You enjoy Nigerian history. Let's continue. Furthermore, known OPGA members and functionaries, such as organizing and field secretaries, as well as candidates for election, were harassed and hounded around the region like common animals of prey. The situation was so insufferable that Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe felt obliged to speak in outright condemnation of it all in an official broadcast to the nation. This was the major reason why he refused to invite Balewa to form a new administration immediately after the NPC had been declared winner. It took the intervention of some eminent Nigerians. Again, there's a gap between here that I probably did not know at the time. And let me say something. I say this with all sense of modesty. When Papa says that was the major reason why he refused to invite Balewa to form a new administration immediately after the NPC had been declared the winner, it took the intervention of some eminent Nigerians before Zik invited Balewa on 4 January 1965 to form a new government. That was after 4 days of very intense suspense and national confusion. What Papa probably knew and did not write or did not know was the fact that within that period, Zik was actually planning a coup with Ojukwu. And if you're looking for sources, I will tell you. Read Emeka by Frederick Forsyth and read Beckon to Serve by Shehu Shagari. Start with those, there are others, but you get it. And if you also read Reminiscences by David Ejo, that was when they were going to have a coup. Until those senior officers, I think it was Adedokunba Demola, there was Elias, and so on and so forth, they intervened and, so just saying that some things also went down. Maybe they didn't want to tell the whole world. Maybe Papa didn't want to tell the whole world because, but time has passed now, so we can talk about these things. With the NPC restored to office as the party controlling the federal government, hope for my release through the ballot box was pinned to the Western Region election, which was to take place sometime in 1965. For sure, a Western Region government could not effect my pardon and release, but it could exert a pressure that would be almost irresistible and hence productive. Let me pause to say this. Someone says Ejo gave most detailed account. Yes, that's the book, Reminiscences. Maybe we should read it one of these days. I think I should bring it here one of these days. So we hear from everybody. Thank you for that, Prince. Where were we? Yeah, I was going to make a point here. Awo is saying that the Western region, right, would not be able to effect his pardon or release. Here's a question. If the region could not effect the release, how come Ojukwu claimed that he was the one who effected the release, even though he was the governor? He was only the governor, not even of a region, of a group of provinces, and he did not get authority in the military government. How could he have released Awolowo? In other words, even when it wasn't a military government, it was the federal government or the government at the center who could actually effect the release of Awo from Calabar, not the regional government. So how on earth is a military governor, not the head of state, or the military governor, claiming to be the one to have released Awo in Calabar? Again, rubbish now, leave him answer. Let's continue. The election was held on 11 October 1965. By the way, while all this was going on, the people that went to plan the coup already started planning the coup. Let me also mention it. I know I'm just going here and there. Don't worry. So that Nigeria story is like that. October election of October. And I'm saying this because I've read some authors, particularly from the Southeast, saying that what happened in October of 65 that caused the coup of January. In other words, it was election crisis in Western region that caused the crisis or the coup of 65. It's a lie. At best, you will call the crisis, the wet year crisis, the catalyst. You cannot call it the cause. Why? Because the people who planned that coup started planning in August of 1965. How can the people start planning something in August and you say what they did was caused by what happened in October? Could make sense. How do I know they started buying in August? If you read the special branch report from April 1966, you see it there. I've already told you before, but it's not today's topic. But I'm just telling you so that in case we go and tell you nonsense, you know exactly what to say. Someone says, I call it a convenient excuse, not a catalyst. Well, but that's why I say at best a catalyst. But I think I'll even go with your own opinion now. Movies and music. It says I call it a convenient excuse. I agree with you as a matter of fact. Because they started planning the coup in August. As a matter of fact, it was around late October, September into October, that they got the final person. You know what? Should I read it? No matter when I leave this place, I will read that letter. Even if that's the last thing we do today, I will read that. No, I hope I don't stay too long, but I must finish this thing today. By the way, this has happened because of the issues we've been having since. We've been having technical issues, and I want to appreciate you for staying tuned and for your patience. And I'm actually doing this because, I mean, this is my way of also paying back. So if Emagbo, in August, I'm reading special branch report, April 1966. What is this special branch report about? It is a document that was published by the Nigerian police after interrogating all those who were involved in the coup of January 15, 1966. And they published it in April 66. It was not for public consumption until much later, by the way. It was later leaked. It was actually for government, whatever. It was an official government. In August 1965, 3 officers, Major Okafo, Major Ifajuna, and Captain Oji, who were already dissatisfied with political developments in the Federation and the impact of these developments on the army, held series of discussions between them about the matter and set about the task of searching for other officers who held views similar to their own and who could eventually be trusted to join them in the enterprise of staging a military coup d'etat. In September 1965, Major I.H. Chukwuka, that's Humphrey Chukwuka, of Nigerian Army Headquarters Lagos, was persuaded to join the group of conspirators. Followed in October 1965 by Major C.I. Anufro, also of the Army Headquarters. Major C.K. Nzogu was brought in around that time through the efforts of Major Anufuru, an old friend of both Majors Nzogu and Okafor. Major Nzogu in turn secured the support for the plan of Major A. Ademoyiga, who had worked with him in the Nigerian Army Training College, Kaduna. In other words, the planning of that coup started in August. The Operation Wete happened in October. How could what happened in October be the cause of the meeting in August? Are they time traveling? The election was held on 11 October 1965. By general consent, it was blatantly and shamelessly rigged in every aspect of electioneering, voting, and declaration of results. The day after the Western Region House of Assembly was dissolved, an order was made banning all public meetings and processions and imposing a dusk to dawn curfew. Difficulties were placed in the way of opposition candidates to file their nomination papers within time, so as to make it possible for most candidates of the party in power to be returned unopposed, and at the same time to disqualify most of the AG candidates. In addition, when the poll was concluded, the ballot papers were not counted at all in some AG strongholds. In places where ballot papers were counted, false results were declared and announced in the news media, the majority of which were controlled by the federal and Western region governments. The media controlled by the Eastern region government under Dr. Okpara announced correct results from those polling stations where counting took place. Those results indicated that the AG had won the election. Nonetheless, Akintola claimed to have won, and on 12 October 1965, the day after the election, he was invited to form a new government, and he did. In 1964, some AG candidates filed election petitions against NNDP candidates in the Ibadan High Court. It was a practice for the courts to require, if I'm rushing, stay with me, Ejo. It was the practice of the court to require a petitioner to pay into court a specified sum of money as deposit for cost. It was also the practice in order to ensure easy access to the court of justice for petitioners and all litigants for that matter, for judges to make such sum reasonable and not onerous. In 1964, the deposit which I'm rushing, hold on please. In 1964, okay, I read that part. In 1964, the deposits which Mr. Justice Adeyinka Morgan and Mr. Justice Fatai Williams required of the petitioners were so onerous that they abandoned their cause. Consequently, in 1965, the members of Action Group decided not to file any petition against the gargantuan malpractices which had occurred at the election. I'm going to jump very quickly. Let's just jump to this part. They could not, talking about AG members, they could not afford the cost of petition, and they resorted to self-redress instead. They did this fully conscious of the consequences of such actions as they might take. In the result, there were widespread bloodshed, arson, maimings, killings, and ineffable sufferings. The AG members suffered too, but the opponents bore the brunt and suffered the most. Is describing Operation Wete. Balewa's new administration lasted only 1 year, 10 days. Akintola's new government in the Western region, on the other hand, lasted only 93 days. The two governments were thrown. I think I'm tired. I really want to keep reading, but I'm tired. So just give me a second. I'm going to read though. Just give me a second. Balewa's new administration lasted only 1 year, 10 days. Akintola's new government in the Western region, on the other hand, lasted only 93 days. The two governments were overthrown on the same day, 14 January 1966, in a coup d'etat by a group of officers, majors in the Nigerian Army. There were remote causes for the coup d'etat, but the immediate cause was the electoral malpractices of 1964, which was what led to what happened with Zik and Ojukwu, which you will find in the book by Ejo, Reminiscences, Forsyth, Emeka, and also Shagari's book, Beckon to Serve. Okay, so Papa is saying here that the immediate cause of the coup was the electoral malpractices of 1964 and 65, and the attendant widespread violence and bloodshed in the Western region, which were uncontrolled, and to which, from all indications and even his own utterance, the Prime Minister was totally indifferent. In the wake of the coup d'etat, a federal military government was formed with Major General Aguiyi at its head. It was customary that in that kind of event, political prisoners like myself were pardoned and released. All my 20s since yesterday, now where will they come with this? So, in the wake of the coup d'etat, a federal military government was formed with Major General Aguiyi at its head. It was customary that in that kind of event, political prisoners like myself were pardoned and released. So expectations were again high that in a matter of days rather than weeks, I would be released, but not so. I waited in vain for 2.5 months for the joyful news. Then in March, Chief Giwa Osage, the director of prisons, paid a visit to Calabar. He had a message for me from the head of the military government. It was to the effect that if I wrote a petition for pardon and release, it would be granted. I'll read that slowly. In March, Chief Giwa Osage, the director of prisons, paid a visit to Calabar. He had a message for me, that's Papa, from the head of the military government, that's Ironsi. It was to the effect that if I wrote a petition for pardon and release, it would be granted. Why petition? And why on my own behalf alone, and not on behalf of my prisoner colleagues? I did not like the suggestion, and I told the director so. He assured me that once I was released, the release of the others would soon follow. I told him that I would think about it and let him know my final decision. About 2 weeks later, he sent a message by telephone through Mr. Gabriel Owo, the superintendent in charge, that it had been agreed that the petition could cover all my colleagues as I wished. Then, without delay, I wrote the following, which was immediately dispatched. Confidential, 28 March 1966, the Supreme Commander and Head of the Federal Military Government, Lagos, through the Director of Prisons, Prisons Headquarters Office, Private Mailbag 12522, Lagos. Sir, Prerogative of Mercy, Section 101(1)A of the Constitution of the Federation Act 1963. I am writing this petition for free pardon under Section 101(1)A of the Constitution of the Federation Act 1963 on behalf of myself and some of my colleagues whose names are set out in the annex hereto. Before I go further, I would like to stress that the reasons which I advance in support of this petition in my own behalf basically hold good for my said colleagues, for they share the same political beliefs with me and have intense and unquenchable loyalty for the ideals espoused by the party which I have the honor to lead. There are many grounds which could be submitted for your consideration in support of this petition, but I venture to think that 7 of them are enough, and it is to these that I confine myself. Number 1. In the course of my evidence during my trial, I stated that my party favored and was actively working for alliance with the NCNC as a means, among other things, of solving what I described as the problem of Nigeria and strengthening the unity of the Federation. In October 1963, that is about a month after my conviction, and while my appeal to the Supreme Court was still pending, a peace committee headed by the Chief Justice of the Federation, Sir Tokunbo Ademola, made overtures to me through my friend Alhaji W.A. Elias to the effect that if I abandoned my intention to enter into alliance with the NCNC, which according to the committee was an Igbo organization, and agreed to dissolve the action group, and in cooperation with Akintola, now deceased, form an all-embracing Yoruba political party, which I would lead, and which would go into alliance with the NPC, I would be released from prison before the end of that year. I turned down these terms because I was of the considered opinion that the acceptance will further widen and exacerbate intertribal differences and gravely undermine the unity of the Federation. Today, the military government of which you are the head leaves no one in any doubt that it stands for Nigerian unity. But it must be emphasized that in this connection, that if I had prized my personal freedom above the unity of Nigeria, I would have been set free in 1963. In that event, this petition would not have been necessary, and the work of consolidating the unity of the country to which you and your colleagues now set your hands might have been made extremely more intractable and irksome. As recently as 20th December 1965, identical peace terms, the only variance being that the alliance with the NCNC, which was now in reality should be broken, were made to me here in Calabar Prison by a delegation representing another peace committee headed by the self-same Chief Justice of the Federation and purporting to have the blessing of the Prime Minister with the unequivocal promise that if I accepted the terms, my release would follow almost immediately. I rejected the terms for the reasons which I have outlined above. Number 2, one of the monsters which menace the public life of this country up to January 14 this year is opportunism, with its attendant evils of jobbery, venality, corruption, and unabashed self-interest. From all accounts, you are inflexibly resolved to destroy this monster. That was precisely what my colleagues and I had tried to do before we were rendered hors de combat since 29th May 1962. On 2 different occasions, I was offered first the post of Deputy Prime Minister before May 1962, and second, that of Deputy Governor General in August 1962. If I would agree to fold up the opposition and join in a national government. I declined the 2 offers because they were designed exclusively to gratify my self-interest, with no thought of fostering any political moral principle which could benefit the people of Nigeria. The learned judge who presided over the treasonable felony trial commented unfavorably on my non-acceptance of one of these posts and held that my action lent weight to the case of the prosecution against me. I must say, however, that in all conscience I felt and still feel that a truly public-spirited person should accept public office not for what he can get for himself, such as the profit and glamour of office, but for the opportunity which it offers him of serving his people to the best of his ability, by promoting their welfare and happiness. To me, the 2 aforementioned posts were sinecures and were intended to immobilize my talents and stultify the role of watchdog which the people of Nigeria looked upon me to play on their behalf at that juncture in our political evolution. I'll just pause to quickly say something. That it was offered Deputy Prime Minister, that's Awolowo, in May 62, and Deputy Governor General, that's Zik, in August 62. And if he had done that, there wouldn't have been a treasonable felony, to be fair. But there was a treasonable felony trial, and in that trial, the justice, that's Justice Showemimo, talked about how Awolowo's refusal to take on any of those posts was, proof that he didn't care about Nigerian unity. And Papa said that he could have taken it or taken any of those posts if he was thinking about himself, but he was thinking about the country as a whole. By the way, one of these days, I think we should discuss that treasonable felony trial again. We started, but we didn't get to the part where we talk about how the case itself went, with the final case rather. That part I think we'll talk about some other day. Let's continue. Number 3, this leads me to the third ground. From newspaper reports, it would appear that you and your colleagues, like all well-meaning Nigerians, are anxious that on the termination of the present military rule, Nigeria should become a flourishing democracy. Now, democracy is a political doctrine which is very intimately dear to my heart. It was to the end that it might be accepted as a way of life in all parts of the Federation that I campaigned most vigorously and relentlessly in northern provinces of Nigeria from 1957 to 1962, to the implacable annoyance of some of my political adversaries. It was to this end that this doctrine might survive the severe onslaught of opportunist and mercenary politics that I refused to succumb to the temptation of the national government. Many views, some of them well considered and respectable, have been expressed about the value or disvalue of opposition as a feature of public life in a newly emergent African state. Speaking for my party, I submit that the opposition which I led did, to all intents and purposes, justify its existence and was acclaimed by the masses of our people as essential and indispensable to rapid national growth. This was so because the abrogation of Anglo-Nigerian Defense Pact was one of the feathers in its cap. Some of the policies which the government of the day later adopted, such as the creation of federal military, I'll tell it again, some of the policies which the government of the day later adopted, such as the creation of a federal Ministry of Agriculture and the introduction of drastic measures to correct our balance of payments deficit, were among those persistently and constructively urged by the opposition inside and outside Parliament. The point I wish to emphasize here is that it was not out of spite or hatred for anyone that I chose to remain in opposition instead of joining the much talked of national government. I did so in order to serve our people to the best of my ability in the position in which their votes had placed my party, and to ensure that the young plant of democracy grows into a sturdy, flourishing tree in Nigeria. Number 4. Since the declaration of emergency in the Western region on 29th May 1962, political tension has existed in Western Nigeria. My conviction on 11 September 1963, together with the surrounding bizarre circumstances, has led not only to the heightening of the tension in Western Nigeria, but also to its profuse and irrepressible percolation to other parts of the Federation. The result is that it can be said without much fear of contradiction that today the majority of our people are passionately concerned about and fervently solicitous for the release of myself and my colleagues. The work of reconstruction on which you and your colleagues have embarked demands that all the citizens of Nigeria in their respective callings should give of their maximum best. A state of psychological tension, however, I'll tell it again, a state of psychological tension, however much it may be brought under control of repressed, does not and cannot conduce to maximum efficiency. In spite of themselves, people laboring under emotions which this kind of tension automatically generates are bound to make avoidable mistakes, which in turn have adverse effects on national progress. It is therefore in the national interest that this tension should be relaxed, if possible, without further delay. Number 5. A petition of this kind is by its very nature bound to be replete with self-adulation. I hope and trust that in the circumstances this is excusable. It is in this hope and trust that I assert that my colleagues and I have the qualifications and capacity to render invaluable services to our people and fatherland. Every day that we spend in prison, therefore, must be regarded as 24 unforgiving hours of truly valuable services lost to our young country. Even my most inveterate enemies have given the following testimony about me. Awolowo has still a great deal to give this country. Awolowo has still a great deal to give to this country. No country, however advanced and civilized, can afford to waste any of its talents, be they ever so small. Nigeria is too young to bury some of her talents as she was compelled to do under the old regime. It is within your power to restore my colleagues and me to a position where our fatherland can again rejoice at the contributions which we are capable of making to its progress, welfare, and happiness. Number 6. Nigeria is now 66 months old as an independent state. The final phase in the struggle for Nigeria's independence was initiated by my party in the historic self-government motion moved by Chief Anthony Enaoro and supported by me on 31st March 1953. It should be regarded as more than ironical and as palpably tragic that two of the architects of that independence, and indeed the pace setters and accelerators of its final phase, should be on free in a free Nigeria. 1 second, please. It should be regarded as more than ironical and as palpably tragic that two of the architects of that independence, and indeed the pacesetters and accelerators of its final phase, should be on free in a free Nigeria. In precise terms, I have spent 46 out of the 66 months of independence in one form of confinement or another. I happen to know that the leaders of the old civilian regime, in spite of themselves, did not feel quite easy in their conscience about the plight into which they had maneuvered me in the scheme of things. And I dare to express the hope and belief that you personally view my present confinement with concern and disapproval. Number 7. It is unusual, almost invariably the case on the accession of revolutionary regime, for political prisoners and indeed other prisoners of some note to be released as a mark of disapproval of some of the doings of the old regime, or in token of the new dawn of freedom which comes in the wake of the new regime. It would be invidious to quote on specific instances, but in the case of my colleagues and myself, by courageously and adamantly opposing the evils which your regime now denounces in the former civilian administration, I think we are perfectly justified if we expect you to regard us as being in tune with your yearnings and aspirations for Nigeria, and therefore entitled to our personal freedom under your dispensation. In view of the foregoing reasons, which clearly demonstrates 1. That I have always and under trying circumstances steadfastly and unyieldingly A. stood for the unity of Nigeria, B. been opposed to political opportunism with its attendant evils, C. fostered the growth of democracy in Nigeria, 2. that my incarceration A. has led to the heightening of political tension among Nigerians, which tension can only be relaxed by my release, B. has deprived our fatherland of invaluable services such as we have rendered before, and can still 3. that the evils which my colleagues and I condemned and vehemently refused to compromise with in the old civilian government are what you now quite rightly denounce and are taking active steps to remove in order to pave the way for national and beneficial reconstruction. I most sincerely appeal to you to be good enough to exercise in favor of myself and my colleagues the prerogative of mercy vested in you by Section 101, 1A of the Constitution of the Federation Act 1963 by granting me as well as each of my colleagues a free pardon. If you do, your action will be most warmly, heartily, and popularly applauded at home and abroad, and you will go down to history as soldier, statesman, and humanitarian. Yours truly, Obafemi Awolowo. Annex A. Those convicted for treasonable felony. Number 1. Those still serving their terms. You are Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Chief Anthony Naoro, Mr. Lateef K. Jakonde, Mr. Dapo Mishade, Mr. S. Onitiri, Mr. Gabi Shashore, Mr. Sunday Ebiotoma, Mr. V.I. Nwabiola. Those who have already served their terms, Mr. S. Otubanjo, Mr. S. J. Umoren, Mr. S. Oishile. Those who have not been tried, Mr. S. J. Koku, Mr. Ayo Adebanjo, Mr. James Aluko. Ikoku was one who came later in the 80s to say that I will do something. Rather. Let's continue. The Supreme Military Council considered my petition, but could not immediately grant my request. According to information which was later confirmed, it was feared that my release might create problems with which they might find it difficult to cope before they had properly settled down in office. One second. I want to see how much I need to read. One second. I need to actually do something with my voice. And we've read the letter. I'm going to conclude this chapter tomorrow. Okay? And then, of course, we've been having some of these technical issues. So, my goal was to finish that letter, and we've done that. The latter part of that chapter has to do with what happened when the military government said they were going to release him, and then how Gowon eventually released him. Okay? And then the letter that Gowon wrote, and so on and so forth. We will read that tomorrow. Right? But I think we should call it a day at this point. We've achieved what we wanted to achieve, which is reading the letter that Awolowo wrote in March. That was 28th March 1966. I didn't hear anything from the government until July, and even then some things took place, and we'll talk about all of those things much later. All right? Well, thank you very much for being part of today's session and for sticking with me through the rains and network issues. But I'm glad that we're able to get to this point for today. No questions, no answers, because time's a law. But somebody asked a question. How did I know someone was going to ask a question? Excuse me. Your Might on YouTube says, question, why do the Igbos hate so much from okay, I think it's meant why do the Igbos hate us so much from generation to generation, and devilish plans to annihilate and subjugate us completely? Should I tell you the truth? Which is the only thing I can tell you, by the way. I'm looking for a mild way to say it. Yeah, jealousy, greed, but that's not really the reason. The real reason is this. They missed out on cultural evolution when other people evolved. They missed out on conquering. They missed out on empire building. They missed out on kingdom building. I mean, building kingdoms of worth and value. They missed out on all of those things for centuries and millennia. Nigeria was the opportunity they had to realize a dream that your fathers fulfilled. If you really think about it, you'll feel sorry for them. How do you have a person come out in 1951 looking for unitary system and in 66 doing it to favor his ethnicity? And you go to Yoruba history, you find that happening in 10th century AD in Ile-Ife. Amongst the people of the same language and ethnicity and ethnic identity. But a clown will do that for several people of different identities because he wants to create one group. That's what people did thousands of years before they came around. They came late. So in their mind, they're trying to also become what others have been. The ambition was late to manifest. What their father should have done is it's what some of them are trying to do today. When you hear the word unity, is essentially trying to accomplish that goal that will never happen. The way life works, when you get to a particular point, let me tell you a story. We are done today. If you're driving and you miss your way, maybe you're supposed to turn right at some point, you're using GPS, for instance, or Google Map or whatever, and it says turn right, and you don't turn, you keep driving. What Google Map does for the most part is give you another option much later. You will not see the GPS, I don't know, that will tell you to reverse. I've never seen. If you have, please let me know. That you just hear the message on GPS, just say reverse so I can make that right turn that you missed. No. So find a way to either get you back there or get you where you're going using another route. Please, if you're on TikTok, let's power tab. This is showing inactivity. Or find another way. Here's the point. What they are doing is what people have left in the past. They're trying to go back to it and create something with it. Is really you can call it greed and jealousy, and those things are true, but in actual fact, it's a product of an uncivilized mind. And these are the mildest things I can use to explain it. Think about it. But there are things I don't want to say, but if you really think about it, just think about it. All this greed, selfishness, they are symptoms of a fundamental problem that has to do with the mindset of the people. You stayed, and this thing is not. You cannot separate this from the identity of the people themselves. And how you know the identity of the people? There are many good things that happen in their region. I'm trying not to mention any ethnicity so that the blow will not be as heavy. There are great things that happen in every ethnic group. Okay, people can talk about certain artifacts that they found in some places, but in reality, when you look at your name, it can also give an idea who you are. And let me say it this way: whenever you find a person who says that bow for nobody, that person, what they're doing, they're trying to make up for something else. Sometimes, not every time, but sometimes, the most defiant of the people you find around is actually the one who just recently got freed. Oh, I don't want to say some things, man. Let's just leave it. But if you really understand what happened, you feel sorry for these people. Very primitive. I mean, studying anthropology, for instance, such words, you say, don't use such words. You know, when people use such words for Africans, you know, don't use such words. But if you really think, if you really study these things, some people are primitive. Imagine you're trying to get kings in 2026. You're now opening kings, everybody. Everywhere you go, you're trying to found kingdoms. People did that centuries and millennia ago. You couldn't. It's not that they didn't. They couldn't. Didn't would mean that you chose not to, of your own volition, of whatever reason, you didn't do it. Couldn't mean you didn't have the capacity to actually do it. They couldn't. And there's a reason for that. I don't want to go into all the details, but the point here is that what you're seeing really is the people who were stunted in their growth, who were just trying to understand the concept of nationhood with Nigeria. Do you know when Yoruba people began to, I mean, when we said 1,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 900 years ago, that was when they began to even create this thing where you can have kingdoms in different places, but they can all point to one particular source. There's no single source for the Igbo identity itself. Was the common Igbo identity was created by the British. Nobody on earth can tell me I just lied. Nobody that has sense. In other words, we are all one. Was created by the British. And that's when people talk, they're always going to say, oh, you are like, we're not like this, we're not the same. There's no common identity, there's no common ancestry, there's no common language, there's no history of kings, there's no history of building. I mean, you have examples here and there, but sometimes they'll be related to another group. It's a very serious thing. And I think, and it's not a problem that cannot be solved. That's the thing. Listen, I believe, and in my studies, I think just about every culture has gone through this phase. The difference is the time. Just about everyone has gone through this. Just about every group. The time and the circumstances will be different. Sha. For instance, there was no time where bulk of Yoruba people were slaves in Yoruba land and they carried and put inside one place. No, that did not happen now. There's no time when an external group came to Yoruba land and decided to just colonize parts of Yoruba land. That did not happen now. And there's no group in Yoruba land whose name is synonymous with slavery. And if there were, there went, and there aren't. But even if there were, they would have even built themselves and gone beyond that nomenclature, like many people have done in different parts of the world, particularly in Europe. But you require, in order to do that, you have to have a teachable spirit. Whenever you say a person say, I bow for nobody, that person was a slave. Even at work, whenever you say a person say, I bow for nobody, that person is that worse or still a slave? They're trying to make up for the years they spent bowing. I'm not mentioning anybody right now, just talking. If you have a problem with humility, it's not your fault. You have the mindset of a conquered person. That's why. If you are conquered, you will not want to bow. Because to bow reminds you of your experience as a conquered race. But if you're a bad person, when you bow, people are like, why are you bowing? Is that your God? I'm like, well, how does that make the person your God? But it's because your own frame of reference is different. A person who has been forced to bow several times, when he has the opportunity to taste just a whiff of freedom, you can't tell them to even squat or even tell them to bow. You can't even tell them to do anything that resembles, what's the word now? Humility. Humility for them will be humiliation. I think I've gone beyond the answer. And the reason is because I'm running away from some things. Excuse me. I'm running away from some things. But in reality, all this, because when you read all these things, how can a group be thinking of doing this? It looks like what or your people will plan for Dahomey. I mean, even among Yoruba people, we've done it to ourselves. We had the bad one, Ekiti. But you see, the at least it's even within us. But to plan for another group in the 20th century to take over the place, now imagine that when everybody was carrying on and fighting, their parents did not do it. That's why you also see that with the landmass. You also see that with the landmass. I'm trying not to mention any group because I know that what I'm saying can be a bit tough. And I'm also trying to... Let me tell you something. Whenever you wake up, it's your morning. There are things that the English have done today that Yoruba people have not done. And there's a time the English people were also subject to what Yoruba people are subjected to right now. English was a colony of Rome for 400 years. They were colonized by Rome. That's why when we have conversations in Nigeria, sometimes people say things like, oh, we are colonized. I get it. But the people that colonized you were also colonized now. My job is not to tell England that I'm better than England. You know, some people do some all this unnecessary, I'm superior to England. There's nothing to superior that you can shout. What have you built? In the last, my father's it. That was your father's. What have you done in the last 50, 100 years? So what you do is you calm down, you appreciate what your fathers have done, but you also learn from what these guys are doing right now. Then you combine it. That's what China did. Chinese, what's the word now? The Chinese culture is way older than many European cultures. Some will say 3,000, some will say 5,000. But in to Dojue, they learned from the West. And they rebuilt. They did not leave their own philosophy, but they knew that they couldn't move just holding on to what their fathers did. So they mixed it up and they built and they grew. What I'm saying basically is that even Yoruba people, it's not like we have gotten to our El Dorado. I'm just saying that, as I'm saying for others, we're just at different levels. That's just the point. Some people are just beginning to wake up. Some people are still sleeping. Some people are awake. Some people are like, why am I like this? Some people are already working in their heads. That's why you have SWDC. Look at all the 6 regions in Nigeria. How come it's only SWDC you hear in the news doing all those things? What is Genie? Because we are tired of being like this as Yoruba people. But imagine you're telling yourself, we are better than England. We are better than everybody. Then they come to your house, they look at you. You don't have working, well, we have working railways. At least we have Lagos, but we have... But the point, you get what I'm saying? Like, you can't really compare with the people you say are better than. The same way I cannot say Yoruba people are better than England, or Yoruba land is better than Scotland, is the same way it's insane when people say Igbo land is better than Yoruba land. It doesn't make sense. There's no basis for comparison. And it's not about just the land, it's also about the mind. How evolved are you? Any small thing, see what you have done to me, it tells me that you are still... Okay. Anyway, that all this student came because somebody asked the question. They said, why are people so evil? And please, if you're from the Southeast and you're like, why are they always talking about? You don't know what your fathers have done to other people, and what you are still doing. When you guys cry on social media, what you're doing, you're just reliving all these nonsense strategies from the 1940s. Nothing new. That's why I answer it the way I do. I answer it with compassion. I feel sorry for many people. Also a bunch of interesting characters. Anyway, God bless Nigeria. I hope I answered your question without answering. I don't want to be saying, oh, because they hate people, because they are jealous. All those things, they are true, but they're just. You look at a person, for instance, and you cannot say 200 years ago, this is what my people did. So even though I will not say, oh, because my father did something 200 years ago, I'm better than England, I still need to remember what they did so that I have a place in the world. This thing is interesting. You get the point. This is what we have done, so I know where I am in the world. This is our philosophy. This is what Oromila taught. This is our Yoruba philosophy. Agreed. Now, how do they do things in England? and not take it and add it to my own and not build something. No. It's just like you have people who hate what their fathers did, or people who are telling their Egbon that they are better than them, and they want to colonize. How can you want to colonize Yoruba people when you never built an empire or a kingdom in your life? And it wasn't just one person. A group of people did it in the 40s, 50s, 60s. Ojukwu did it again in 67, or 60, 66. Read this letter now. You read some of these things, and you'll be like, wait, who was thinking of colonizing Yoruba? Who? Ojotoro loko eleko mati e sha o adupe lo Ọlọ́run. Ọlọ́run ṣàánú gbogbo wa. Oyo Ọlọ́run. Oyo Ọlọ́run. The question the answer don't long past the question yourself. I had to leave how many minutes ago? Let us go home. I promise to finish this thing tomorrow. We cannot live happily together in Nigeria, Sha. Like we are all good brothers and sisters, good people, great nation. But I hate it with a passion when people think that their joy is a product of the subjugation of another person, especially when the other person is superior to them. I don't like comparison, but I'm going to use that word, superior. How can you live up until 1966 to think of unifying people? And you know the craziest part, all these the leaders, they need to wake them up and slap their faces. You didn't even think of unifying your own ethnicity. Thank you, Your Might. You did not think of unifying your own ethnicity. Charity begins at home, Mabi. If you want to do unity, all this, that's why I don't believe in all this Nigerian unity that people talk about. Nigerian unity is not by rhetoric. It's based on purpose. Let us unite to do this. As a people, we can do this. There's vision, right? There's inspiration. There's purpose. Not just mouth, just talking. Let us unite. You are shouting that I should unite. In your own place, you have caste system. Amongst your people, you have some people that are called, less. Some people are higher. You have a stratification in one ethnicity, and you're looking for Nigerian unity. Are you dumb? What kind of... We deceive ourselves in this country, or just be speaking English. You have a caste system. You have a class system. This town is higher than this town. I'm from Ife. I am not higher than any Yoruba person. I'm an Ife man. I'm from the royal family in Ife. Let me just say, have I said it here before? That's what some people call me Kabesi. I am not higher than anybody in Yoruba. No, if you like, come from a tiny village inside one small lungu, you are as Yoruba as me. It's Nigeria that in some places I hear some people say that this particular town is higher than this town. This town is not higher than this town. It is the people that will tell you that we look up to your town. Not that you'll be shouting, I am higher, I am higher. That's why when Yoruba people also do that nonsense, they say, this town is higher. I'm like, which town? Owó town yẹn náà dàkílẹ̀ gbé jáde nínú town yín láti ọjọ́. Èmi ọ̀rọ̀ tèmi mo lè sọ̀rọ̀ ṣáàbọ̀ mi kàn fẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀ lórí social media ni. A ní ilé ìjọ ilé lọ. Kí lẹ ti wá gbé ṣe? Yóò ròǹbòrùn. The point is, let's go home. If you still go to your space and you say this town is higher than this place, people from this town are higher than this other town, and then there's categories in that space, that means you don't have unity amongst yourself. And then you now have a caste system. Some people are untouchables. They can't come into certain spaces. You can't marry them. You can't do this with them. And you are looking for Nigerian unity. You are dumb. People are not telling you, but it's true. It's important to tell you. Come to your brother and be asking for unity. Unity for what? Unite in your group. This your question has brought out answers, Sha, but it is well. God bless all of us. We are all good people, great nation, Nigeria, but don't be bringing unity as a conversation. It makes no sense, particularly when you are who you are. Do you know what I went through in 1945? After we fought amongst ourselves, because we fought. They had to say, okay, let's do this. Their goal was about their people. Their people. How do you create that unity of purpose? 1 second. What's your panel? So I just read something here. Someone says, I read it on Canada immigration website. They use caste system to seek asylum in Canada. What? To be fair, you know what? To be fair, whatever they want to use to seek asylum, they should use it. If that works, if it helps them, I don't have any. Have you read the book by Igbokwe? Igbo's 25 years after the war. He said, and I quote, colonization being dehumanizing and whatever. I'm paraphrasing apparently. The book is somewhere here, but I don't want to open any other book tonight. That as bad as colonization was, it was what Ombo, I will find it. You guys don't know your neighbors alone. See, let me tell you something. Knowing your neighbors does not mean that you are disrespecting anybody. It just means that we know where we're talking. What I hate most is somebody just come to my house and say things like, you will find, your house is not good, you are better than you. Then you now discover the person's house. I'm like, how? A person saying your house is not fine, your house is not fine. Maybe I want to see your own father's house first. Once I see it, then somebody says colonization really helped people. It actually did. If we are telling ourselves the truth. Because of what I just said right now, let me look for a book for you guys. Somebody is keeping me here, and the person that asked that question, this is why I didn't want to answer. But I don't mind answering, by the way. Show me one, Bisha. Sorry, I have a number of books stacked. Would you mind if I stood up to look for this good book? This one we're going to do once we are done with this march through prison. I can't find the book. Yeah, what did you with me by? Only taking only our hotel only me. Maybe it's in the library. There's a point he made in that book, right? That I think it's just one line. Oh, everything Timo we phone is just one line. Oh, just I can't remember I want to say the exact way he said it. Give me a second, if you don't mind. Thank you for your patience, and let me read the line I was looking for. It was here all the while. I had to go inside. Let me read this to you. Not everything, because some of these things are heavy. Listen to this. In fact, colonial activity, although itself generally degrading and dehumanizing, offered them the opportunity to escape the inhuman conditions under which they lived. He was talking about folks who were in the caste system. They were the most exploited and downtrodden of that society. I don't want to mention the society. It's written here, but I don't want to read it. And they were without social, economic, or political rights. And they now said, in fact, colonial activity, although itself degrading and dehumanizing, offered them the opportunity to escape inhuman conditions under which they lived. Do you know that the first set of educated people in the Southeast were actually the outcasts? I think I should do a session. I'm going to read an article written by one of their own. And listen, it's not something to feel ashamed about. Sincerely. It's history. There are things I'm not... If I look at Yoruba, I'm like, I wish it didn't happen. But it's history. It happened. But not that you will hide it. If you want to hide it, that's even okay. That's your business. You'll not be going to look at people who are not even at your level. You'll not be telling them how to do things. Say, I develop your mouth. I'm trying not to explain what I just read right now. Let's just leave it alone, please. Someone shall do this session. Let's do our own session. Let's talk to our Yoruba people. Let's talk to our own self. We too, Sure, my point is that anybody can do anything they want to do in their ethnicities. I mean, people have a right. But if you're a Yoruba person, people should not gaslight you. And there are things in Igbo history is not my business to talk about. I don't care. I mean, not like I don't care, but I don't want to talk about. Because if I do, it's going to sound as if, why is he talking about it? That's why when they insult me, I'm like, And the thing about me is that I will not be saying your father, your mother. I will just go and bring out books for you. By that I read, be correct without me having to read those things. The point is that if you're a Yoruba person, love everybody, be good to everyone, but let nobody gaslight you, particularly if they are from wherever they are from. I don't even care, even if they are white. Anyway, let me go. Thank you very much for being part of today's session. Let us go to our father's houses and our mother's houses and our own houses, because our young people will listen as well. Thanks for being here. I hope I answered that question. That question is long. If I want to answer that question very well, we'll do a session. I'll read books. But Kozetolong was blessed, so Kozetolong was Shefun. God has blessed the Igbos as well as every other group. They just have to be more serious with their reality. And if you wonder why do I talk like this, please, okay, just hold on for the book. When it comes out, I will write some of the things I usually don't say here from the national protocol. If you notice these days, if you ask me to read, if I want to read that protocol, I just read a bit of it and leave it, a bit of it and leave it. I don't like to read everything at the same time anymore, because you have to be demon possessed to actually have such plans for every region. These guys had plans for every single region in Nigeria, every single one. Not a political party, an ethnic organization. And they wrote it in there that they wanted to dominate Nigeria. And they now came up with all kinds of strategies, blackmail and gaslighting and all kinds of things just to get it done. Their kids now carry on with those strategies. And when you now speak against it, like, oh, we're not really doing anything bad, though. You are doing something bad. Stop it. May God bless all of us. Let's go home. All right. Thank you for being part of today's session. Tomorrow we'll finish up with Awolowo's with Papa's that chapter in Papa's book, and we'll learn some things tomorrow. 4 p.m. if at time West African time, we'll be on it. All right. To have a lovely evening. But before we go, let's listen to our anthems, and then we'll call it a day.
Nigeria, we our own united men, the tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians all are proud to serve our sovereign motherland. Our flag shall be a symbol that truth and justice reign. It means all that honor, and this we count as gain. To hand to our children a banner without stain. Lord of all creation, grant this our request. Help us to build a nation where no man is oppressed. And so with peace and plenty, Nigeria may be blessed. Nigeria may be blessed.
Àwa ni ìmọ́lẹ̀ ògo adúláwọ̀, ìmọ́lẹ̀ wọ̀ ní wọ́kùn lágbára Ọlọ́run. Lẹ́yìn bá ò ní bàjẹ́ ó, a máa gbèrú sí ní Nàìjíríà náà ní dàrú. Àwọn tá a bá dáwọ́lé, a máa yọrí sí rere ni. May God bless you. May God keep you. May God cause His face to shine upon you and bless the work of your hands. May you succeed in all things that you do. May Nigeria work in a lifetime. God bless Nigeria, our country, and God bless Yoruba land, our nation. Thank you so much for being part of today's session. I'll see you again tomorrow at 4 p.m. if at time West African time. I promise that we're not going to have all these distractions. We're going to have to put some things in place to ensure that we have a better experience. But I'm glad that you stayed to the end today. All right, I'm still trying to fix something on Facebook. Anyway, we got that done. Thank you so much. Do have a lovely evening. I'll see you 4 p.m. By the way, somebody came in and said, are we just starting? No, we have overstayed ourselves. So 4 p.m. is when we start. If we're time, West African time. So please join us tomorrow, and we will have a great time together. Do have a lovely evening. You can go back to our YouTube channel to relive the experience. You can watch some of the things we've discussed before. There's a live section. You have the videos and you have the shorts as well. Thanks a lot. Do have a lovely night rest. Odaro. Esho. Thank you, Yomites on YouTube. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.